Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the citation workshop. Again, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. But we also have a question section at the end. And yeah, we'll just get started.
Yeah, and of course, just feel free to unmute yourself too and jump in with whatever you need. So before we start with the actual meat of the workshop, we have some quick updates. Volume 2 is going to be published very soon, and we'll put the link in the chat for the reservations to get a book. The books are free, but you do just have to fill out this form in order to pick one up. So that's in the chat now. And then we also have volume 3, which we've published online, and then we're working on getting it published in print. We're sending it to Father Horan, and we're waiting for that to come back to us, which might not be until the fall. So if you wrote for volume 3, look for that in the fall. And then we have rough draft number 2 due April 9th, so a little more than a week. At this point, everyone should really be working on their citations, and we're going to go more in depth with that in this workshop so everyone is pretty clear on what we're asking for. And then also we have a couple events and databases, just one of each actually, and I'll put the internship database in the chat. This is just like a Google Slides, Google Slides document, and it just has a ton of really great internship sources for this summer and beyond. So if you're looking for an internship for the summer, especially a legal internship, definitely check the database out. And then lastly, we have the Tatiana Hyman event on April 13th. And again, she is the editor-in-chief of the Fordham Law Review.
And all of this details regarding a lot of these events have been sent to you in the FULR MailChimp emails that you should be receiving. And if you're not receiving them, please reach out to me directly.
And then just to reiterate what Reeve mentioned about the rough draft, we can't accept rough draft submissions that don't have an attempt at a Blue Book citation guide. I know the Blue Book is new for most of you, so it's totally fine. Like, not everything is going to be perfect, but we will not accept rough draft submissions that don't attempt it, considering the amount of resources that we have to help writers succeed at the Blue Book citation guide. So with that, our citation resources that we have in addition to this workshop, which will be posted on YouTube, and we'll also send you the slides today. We have the Style and Citation Guide, which is available on Issue, and also I've emailed it to all of the writers. We have our YouTube channel, which has mini lessons on how to cite common resources. You can also type any questions in the group chat, and you can even send specific material and we can help you create the citation. And you can also set up Zoom appointments with myself or Reeve if you have a lot of questions about Blue Book or want to make sure that you're doing it correctly, or want a second set of eyes. Anything is fine. Our goal is just to really help writers understand Blue Book citations and be able to implement them into their notes before rough draft submissions.
Just really quickly to touch on why footnotes are important. Obviously, they prevent plagiarism, and we don't want to get caught in that. We're not really sure what would happen to us, but we definitely don't want to find out. Second, they're important for analyzing and tracking sources. So if you've sourced from any other law review, you have to know how to read the footnote to find the information. And we want to provide the same opportunity, I guess, to anyone who's reading the footnotes in our journal. So having proper footnotes so that people can track the sources back to the original source is really vital for the continuation of research outside of just your note and your perception of the research. Third, there is this important ability to expand upon arguments. In the footnote, we'll give some examples of this, but footnotes don't just have to be the citation. They can also include lots of examples, lots of more in-depth explanation of whatever your topic is, especially if it doesn't fit really well in the text of your document. It can fit in a footnote as a sort of side note. And then last, anyone who's planning on going to law school or getting a job in a legal field, you need to know Blue Book because this is what everyone uses. So having a little bit of a head start now is going to be really good for your 1L classes, and then also everything you do in the legal realm in the future too.
So this is just a flowchart about what needs to be cited. So in general, an author's words, an author's idea, and obviously direct quotations need to be cited. So if you use quotation marks, automatically needs to be cited. If you are citing another author's idea, such as paraphrasing a quote, anything like that needs to be cited. And also, we'll talk about ways to show that you're gathering information from other sources in your footnotes, but not directly citing that specific information. But in general, footnotes really help the credibility of your note. When you have a lot of footnotes, it shows that you've done extensive research on the topic and you have a lot of information to share with your readers. A lot of footnotes doesn't mean that you're not knowledgeable at the topic. So it's okay to have a lot of footnotes. It's not necessarily like a bad thing. So first, we're just going to analyze 2 footnotes. And hopefully this will help give an overview of what footnotes can look like or should look like if you're really striving to achieve the Blue Book citations. So the first footnote here includes 2 citations. One is a court case and the other one is a law review article. So the court case is the first component of this footnote, and the law review article is the second component, separated by a semicolon. And we use the signal phrase "see also," and we'll go through what signal phrases indicate to readers in a following slide, but this is just an important separation between the 2 citations. And this footnote is just important because it shows that you can use multiple citations in one footnote. It doesn't need to be separate footnotes. You can put a lot of information in one footnote, including parenthetical explanations or quotations. The second footnote here shows how you can use footnotes to expand on relevant information to your argument, but information that you might not want to take up a paragraph or textual sentences with in the body of your notes. So in this footnote, I just have information about Marbury versus Madison and judicial review. And then you can include the citations of where you got that information in the footnote as well. So this footnote, again, is important because it shows how you can improve your footnotes by adding more information, and not just using footnotes as citations, but also using footnotes to add information to your article or your note.
Okay, so the first thing you see with every footnote is going to be an introductory signal or a lack thereof. And this is important because it sort of signifies to the reader, or just to the reader, I guess, how you're sourcing the information that you're using. So for example, no introductory signal means that you are citing directly from the source, either using a direct quote or directly paraphrasing whatever the source is telling you. So this is called a supporting signal, and there are 6 of them. And these are the most common sorts of signals. The comparative or contradictory signals are less used just because there's sort of like less of a reason to point out a really good argument against your argument in a footnote. But the supporting signals are important because they allow your reader to understand what you're analyzing versus what you're just paraphrasing. So again, no signal means that you're just completely paraphrasing or quoting from the source and you're not providing any analysis. But if you use something like C, it signals to the reader that you sort of gained this original idea from the source, and then you made an analysis off of the source. So the C indicates that the cited source supports the sentence, but does not directly state it. And we have e.g. example, which indicates to the reader that the source directly states the proposition, but that there are many good examples of many sources that state the same thing. So this is just one good source. This could be used effectively for legislation regarding similar areas or law review articles, making similar arguments. So if you're seeing a lot of research which is sort of pointing to the same conclusion, you want to choose a source that best supports that conclusion and then source from that. And then we have C also, and this indicates that the source supports your claim in a broad sense, but not directly. And when you use this, you need to use parenthetical quotations to explain how the source broadly supports your claim, how it relates to what you're talking about, etc. And then again, comparative and contradictory signals are used less often, just because it's difficult to make a contradictory signal purposeful rather than just showing someone disagrees. So you really want to stick with sources that are just supporting your sources and therefore just sticking to supporting signals.
And the screen that I have up right now is our style and citation guide. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of an introduction of how to navigate at least this section, so that when you go to write your footnotes, you can use this section to help with your introductory signals.
We'll put that in the chat right now too.
So the footnotes that we have here show the introductory signals that we discussed. Footnote 11 here shows a no signal, and these footnotes I pulled from my note that I'm writing for volume 4. And for this footnote, I directly quoted from the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So that's why I did not use a signal phrase. For footnote 28, again, the signal phrase C indicates that the source is supporting the proposition, but you've done somewhat of an analysis about it. And this is from SCOTUS blog, which is an online source. E.g. means example. So this act did a lot of the regulations that I was discussing, but it wasn't the only act that did that. So I wanted to show that the Dodd-Frank Act was one of many examples that does what I was talking about. And then C also is just kind of like, generally this is supporting what you're saying, but in a broader sense, not specifically.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about a couple pretty common citation styles, I guess. So we're going to talk about first a Supreme Court case citation. And citations for Supreme Court cases can be found easily on Nexus Uni. The picture at the top is from Nexus Uni. And as you can see, everything is there that you need to cite. So there's a volume number, reporter, and page number. And yeah, we'll just walk you through step by step. So the first thing is the name of the case, abbreviated and not italicized. This is important because you would expect it to be italicized, and in the shortened form, it is italicized. But for the long citation, you're not going to put it in italics. The second thing is the volume number, followed by the name of the reporter. So there's either the US reporter or the Supreme Court reporter. The US reporter is technically preferred, but Blue Book accepts either, so we accept either, and honestly, we're not going to be picky about it. And then we have the page number of the first page. Again, these are coming in like reporter books, so they're like these huge like documents, these huge like textbooks worth of information. So this is why it starts on page like 483 out of who knows how many. And then immediately following that, we have the cited page number. If you're not citing from a specific page, obviously you're not going to include this. Followed by the year of the decision in parentheses. So you're not going to be using the year argued. So if there are two separate years, one is for the year argued and the other is for the decision, you have to cite the year of the decision, not when it was argued. And then lastly, this is optional, but you can include an explanation or a quotation from the case, especially if you're using a case that you think maybe doesn't exactly, it's not clear why you're talking about this, especially if you use something like see also, where there's like sort of this broad perception that you have, and this is just one case of it. You can say, well, like I use this because of this, and put the reason that you used it in parentheses just to clue your reader in on why you're using it. And if you look to the right, we have the two different shortened forms. We have number 3, Brown 347 US at 496. This is important because in this case, Brown is going to be italicized, whereas in the original citation it wasn't, and then just followed by the volume number, the reporter, and then of course the page number you're setting it at. And again, if you're not using a page number and you're setting it broadly, you don't have to include this. And lastly, we have the id, and again, include a page number or don't include a page number, depending on how you're sourcing it. And next, we're going to just provide an example of a citation for you, and sort of walk you through how to cite a Supreme Court case.
So the court case I'm going to be citing step by step is Bostick versus Clayton County. And you can gather most of the information that you need from for a citation from Nexus Uni. So I have the court case opened on Nexus Uni, and the information is mostly provided at the top section here. So we have the court case Bostick versus Clayton County. You can see that county here is abbreviated. In your footnotes, you want to use the abbreviations that Nexus Uni provides to you. But if you're writing out the court case in a textual sentence in the body of your paragraphs, you can write out the full citation, the full court case name. And then Nexus Uni is super convenient because they provide us with the volume number, the reporter, and the first page number that the citation or the court case appears on in that volume. As Reeve mentioned, there are two types of reporters that we might be using, the Supreme Court reporter and the United States reports. And the main problem with the United States reports is that sometimes there's a lag in the time that it takes for the US reports to issue a decision in their reporting versus when the Supreme Court issued the decision. But the Supreme Court reporter issues the decision in their reports right away. So usually the Supreme Court reporter is only used for recent cases in which there's no US report citation available yet. But if there's a US report citation, Nexus Uni will automatically use that one. So you can really just go with whatever Nexus Uni is automatically giving you. You don't really need to worry about the distinction if you're using Nexus Uni. And then we get the year argued and year decided here. Again, we're using the year decided 2020. And then scrolling through the opinion, once we get past all of the background information, the bold and bracketed page numbers indicate the page numbers that we can cite for the cited page number component of the citation after the first page number. So Nexus Uni gives us the page numbers that appears in the reporter. So going back, the first thing that I'm going to type is Bostock versus Clayton County using the abbreviation, and then 140, which is the beginning page number or the volume number, and then SCT, which is the Supreme Court Reporter. That's just the abbreviation for the reporter. And then it began on page 1731. And then I'm going to include a comma, and then 1733, which is just an arbitrary page number that I decided to cite. And then finally the year and a period. So this would be the full citation for Bostock versus Clayton County. If I was citing the shortened version, so once I write out the full citation in subsequent footnotes, I can just use the shortened version of the citation. And I would just write Bostock 140 at SCT and then an at and a page number. We don't need to include the first page number, the second party, or the year in the shortened version. So this would be the full citation for Bostock versus Clayton County. Does anyone have any questions about Supreme Court citations or anything like that so far? Good. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to look at law review articles. Again, the top picture is from Nexus Uni, and we're really pushing for you guys to be using Nexus Uni just because it's such a great website and all the information is right there, which makes sourcing that much easier. So the first thing you're going to put down is the author's name, first name, last name. I know a lot of times it's last first, but you just write the name as it appears on the document, followed by the title in italics. And then after that comes the volume number and the journal title, and the journal title is going to be in small caps. This font is actually not available on Google Documents, so you can either use regular capitalization and we'll edit it in later, or if you want to use a small cap generator, which you can just find by Googling small cap generator, you can use that. But again, it's really no issue for us just to go back when we're in the Word documents. And then we have, again, the first page number followed by the cited page number, and then finally in parentheses, the year of publication. And then for the shortened, number 3, you just put the author's last name followed by supra note and whatever number the original footnote was. So in this case, it's the first footnote, so you put note 1, and then at, and again, the page number that you're citing at. For the id, you just do id at whatever the page number is or not if you're citing from the same page. And then also, I didn't mention this before, but when you're using id, it means that the source directly above is the same source. So that's why you can see number 3 and 4. The Mannheim source is the same source used in number 4. So you just put id instead of writing Mannheim supernote again. And we're going to do the same thing for a law review article now.
Okay, so I'm going to search a law review article that I want to find on Nexus Uni. And again, Nexus Uni is really great because it can provide all of the information that you need for the citation. And I'm just typing in the name of the article that I want to find. So again, all of the information comes up at the beginning of the Nexus Uni page for the source that you're citing. We have the title here, and then the volume number, the abbreviation of the journal, and the first page number that that article appears on in the journal. We can find the year at the bottom right here. Even though it says spring 2011, we're not going to cite the spring component, just the year. And then we have the author's name right here at the bottom. And this is the same layout as almost every law review article that you could be citing if you find it from Nexus Uni. And usually if you don't find a law review article from Nexus Uni, but you find it just on Google, you can either type in the article's name into Nexus Uni and get all of the citation information, or the law review usually provides some guidance on the citations. And if you have the original page numbers, it's pretty easy to determine the first page number and the cited page number that you're referring to. So the first component of the law review article citation is the author's name, and then we'll need the title of the work, and then the volume number, the journal title, the first page number, and then the cited page number. So the first thing that I'm going to do is type the name of the author, and we type the name of the author the same way that it appears on the article. So if it provides a middle initial or a suffix or a prefix, we can include that as well. And then the title. And then we need the volume number, so volume 79. And then it's the University of Cincinnati Law Review. And that's the abbreviation, again, provided by Nexus Uni. And then the first page number that appears, that the note appears on, and then the cited page number, if I'm citing page 1020, and then the year. And every footnote ends with a period at the end. So this would be the full citation for this law review article. If we were citing the shortened form, again, we have it right here, but it's just the author's last name, supra, the note number, and the page number. So we have the author's last name, supra is in italics, and then let's say the full citation appears on note 24. And then we can do the same page number or a different page number. So this is the citation for the full and shortened law review articles.
Okay, the next thing we're going to cover are online sources. So this includes news articles that originated online. And also this is going to be anything that isn't published annually or periodically. So it's not going to be a law review journal or anything of that nature. So the first thing we have are the author's first name and then the last name. I didn't mention this before, but if you're citing from more than one author, or if you're citing two authors, you put an ampersand between their names as it appears on the document. And if you're citing more than two, so 3 or more, you'll just put the first name and then et al. Followed by the titles in italics, and then the publisher in small font or small caps again. And then in parentheses, the year or date of publication. You can use either. It's preferred that you can find the date, but if you can't, you don't have to go looking for it. You can just put the year down, it's no big deal. And then lastly, the URL. The URLs should not be underlined and they shouldn't be in blue font. So you just make sure that you format it correctly. So just unlink it, unhyperlink it. Also, that would be super helpful. And then again, with the short form, you can use supra. So you put their last name or both of their last names if there are more than two authors or more than one author, followed by supra note at whatever note the original source is from. And then if you're citing immediately after, you just use the supra or you just use the original citation. We can just put id. Most likely you're not going to have a page number with this because a lot of the times it's just going to be like an article on a web page, but if you do find a page, you can put it down, of course. And then we'll provide a citation for this one too.
Okay, so yeah, in general, it's just beneficial to cite a source as an online source. If you find it online and you can't really figure out how to cite it, the main reason for that is that online sources, the citation provides like literally all of the information that the reader would know, that the reader would need to be able to find that source. So if you're really uncertain about what to cite a source as, and if you don't get a chance to ask any members of the editorial board, you can just cite it as an online source. So with that, we're just gonna find a newspaper article that originated online to create a citation. So I'm just gonna search the New York Post. And as Reeve said, sometimes these magazine and news articles might originate in print. And if that's the case, then we cite it a different way. But most law review or most magazine and newspaper articles that we find are generally originating online. And in that case, we can just cite from an online source. So if we just click on a random article, we can find the title and then the author's name. We know that this comes from the New York Post and it looks like it was published today. So this is really all of the information that we need to create the citation. So I'm going to copy and paste the name, although it might have some weird formatting. But the author's name is Carl Campanile. So that's the first component. I don't know if that's the right spelling, but so the first component obviously is the author's name and then the title. So we just want to make sure that it's the same font. All of the footnotes should be Times New Roman, size 10. And then the title should just be italicized. And then we want to include the name, the publisher of the web page. So that might be SCOTUS blog, OIA, or the newspaper that you're citing from. So this is the New York Post. And then we want to include the date in parentheses. So that's March 31st, 2021. And then after that, we include a comma, and then we'll just need the URL of the web page. If the web page URL is too long, or if it's full of the non-textual characters, you can just cite the base URL. So if this URL was way too long to be included in a footnote, we can just do nypost.com. And then with the rest of the information, the reader should be able to find the source with no problem. And since we get the URL formatting with the blue and the underline, we can just remove the link and it sets the formatting back to its original situation. And the shortened form, again, is the same thing as the law review articles. We just use the author's last name, supra, and then the note number. And if there's a page number, you can use the page number. But usually if there's a page number on an online source, there's a better way to cite it than citing as a web page. So does anyone have any questions so far? Oh, I see one.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat from Thomas about when contradictory signals should be used. And Caroline, I think maybe you'll have more to say about this, but I think a good example of when to use one is if you're looking at the dissent of a Supreme Court decision, just because that is such an integral part to the contextualization of the argument, considering that one or more judges ruled maybe directly against um, the majority ruling. So I think if you're siding with the majority in your argument, a really good example of when to use a contradictory signal would be to address the dissent. And then from there, I wouldn't just leave it there. I would sort of talk about the failings of the dissent or the failings of whatever you're sourcing as a contradictory signal or using the contradictory signal for, just because you don't really want to provide a really great argument or a really great rebuttal to your argument without then refuting it back. I hope that makes sense, Thomas.
Yeah, I agree with what Reeve said. I think you can also cite contradictory information if you're, for example, if you're writing about a Supreme Court case, if a district court or a court of appeals has ruled differently in that case, and that's the reason it's in the Supreme Court, you can use a contradictory signal there and explain why that court decision is different than what you're arguing for the Supreme Court decision. Again, the goal with contradictory signals is to be purposeful with pointing out why it's contradictory. You don't want to just say like if I'm arguing that like the sky is blue, I don't want to cite something that says that or if I'm arguing that the sky is red, I don't want to cite something that says like all scientists say that the sky is blue. It would kind of make my note like useless. But contradictory information can be really important in recognizing that like there are people with differing opinions. A lot of our arguments are based on opinions about a Supreme Court case, our personal opinions about legislation, stuff like that. But the goal is just to be purposeful with it. And if you explain why you're citing a contradictory source, and you can even provide a sentence in the footnote after that explaining why you disagree with it, explaining why it doesn't fit well within a court's precedent, stuff like that. I see Thomas is responding, so I'm just going to read it. Would your argument need to be opposed to the contra statement, or could you use it in reference to precedent sources that is non-essential to your reason for addressing it? Thomas, so I feel like when you're using a material in a footnote that's not essential to your reasoning, but if it's not.
Hi, sorry for interrupting. I just
No,
a
that's
quick
okay. Please
question.
explain. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's in like reference to a situation where you're addressing like a faulty kind of law, but you're
Mhm.
talking about two contradicting kind of rulings. Would you use contra in relevance to one source that's already been mentioned, or you need to use contra in relevance to your own argument?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So contra is probably best used in relevance to what you are saying specifically. If you wanted to compare sources, there is a comparative
Yeah, it
signal
should be right
phrase.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that, so for contra and any other contradictory signals, you want to use them when you are contradicting a statement that you're making. I don't think
Thank you for
that,
clarifying. It seems like a semantic thing, but I just want to make sure I was using it correctly.
no, yeah, that's okay. If you're comparing two sources, the best thing to do would be compare A with B and C. And again, like this can really add so much to your note and really like take it to the next level in terms of like the credibility of your research and Also, just like it's a great writing sample to submit to law schools or jobs or anything like that. So yeah, comparing is a great signal phrase. It's kind of difficult to do if you don't have the right sources, but if you do, then definitely go for it. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we keep going? Feel free to type them in the chat as we keep going along.
Okay, so we just have a couple more cases. The first or the next one that we're going to look at are federal statutes. So with these, the first thing you include is optional actually, and it would be the official name of the act. So don't include the act unless it's very well known or if you really want the writer to remember it. So if the name of the act is somehow relevant to your argument or content or context, for example. But yeah, aside from those two reasons, you really don't need to have the name of the act in your footnote. So then most likely the first thing you'll have in the footnote will be the title number. And then as you can see here, it is followed by the code source, the source of the code. So there's either the US code, which is just the pure document, or there are two annotated versions. Again, Bluebook is going to prefer the non-annotated version, but we really don't care what you're using as long as you're sourcing it correctly. Then the next thing is section, but it's going to be abbreviated as this section symbol, which you can actually get on a Mac at least by pressing option 6. And then followed by the section number. And in abbreviations, you might include the subsection, but you might not if that's not necessary. And then the last component is going to be the year of publication in parentheses 2. For short form, for this one, you can only use id, you can't use supra, just because I guess it's a shortened form already because it really isn't that long of a footnote. But when you do use id, you just source id, and then instead of at, you just put the section symbol followed by whatever section your source appears at. And again, if you're citing from the same source as the immediately following or the footnote that is immediately before the id source, you don't need to include the section number. And once again, we will source an example.
Okay, I just have to find my tab here that includes the codes. So you can find all of the US code on uscode.house.gov, and it provides you with all of the titles that of legislation that has been like codified by Congress. So usually if you find legislation just online, you can usually find the title and section number. Usually if you just find like a PDF of the legislation, it includes the title number. But if you're looking specifically for legislation, you can scroll through this list and it gives you all of the information about United States code. So if you want a codified law about the president, about the Coast Guard, about labor laws, patents, etc., you can go through and find those specifically. So if we are trying to cite information from Title VII, which is agriculture, oh, I also forgot to mention, so when you're browsing the United States Code, you can change the publication year to look at when the code was published. So if we wanted to go to 2018, this would be the US code at whenever it was published in 2018. So if you wanted to, again, cite agriculture legislation, you can go into Title VII, which is agriculture. And if we wanted to cite cotton standards, we can click on that and it will give us all of the information and we can click on it and get the exact information. So if we're citing Section 56 of Title VII, which is the agriculture. Section 56 refers to the establishment of content standards and furnishing copies of established standards sold. You can also cite a bunch of other sections. But if we're citing section 56, we can just type in 7, which is the title number, USC, and then we'll need the section number 56, and then the publication year was 2018. I'll have to get the section symbol from somewhere else. I don't have a Mac, so I usually just copy and paste the section symbol and then just change the formatting. And then this is the entire citation. If you want to include the name of the act, you can. It's generally best to include the name of the act when the information, you want the reader to know the name of the act. So for example, if you're writing specifically about the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air Act, you can cite that name. But otherwise, you can just do the title number, the code, the section, and the publication year.
Okay, and then the last example we have is the Constitution. So this is for the Constitution, the US Constitution, but you'll follow a similar format for state constitutions and even for the constitutions of other countries. So the first thing you have is US Constitution abbreviated, as you can see here. And again, if you're using a state constitution, you'll have the state name abbreviated followed by Constitution abbreviated. The second component will be the subdivision of the Constitution. So either the amendment, the article, or the preamble. Caroline, thanks. And then followed by that will be the subdivision number in Roman numerals. And then you'll have, again, the section symbol followed by Arabic numerals, and then the clause abbreviated. If that is a component, this is optional too, depending on how closely you're sourcing it or how broadly you're sourcing it. Also with Arabic numerals. And then lastly, you'll have in parentheses the year repealed or the year amended. This isn't really necessary, the last section or the 6th point, just because it sort of is irrelevant unless your topic is really concerned with the year of the amendment or the Constitution article or any of these things. But in general, you're not really going to be sourcing the year, again, unless it is important for your argument. And then for this one also, the only shortened form you can be using is id. And you're really not going to be using id at anything, because if you're just sourcing a clause, you're going to just put id and not really include anything else. And if you are sourcing from a different section or amendment, you're just going to cite it completely from scratch almost, or just do the long version. And then our last example will be from the Constitution.
So for the Constitution, you can usually just find it online. Let me try to find. Okay, so I have the Constitution open here. This is a great site, just the archives site, to filter what section of the Constitution you're looking for. And in this case, I am looking for Article 1 and Section 8. So I can just filter it through here and it will take me directly to that information. And this is Section 8 of the Constitution. So Article 1 lays out the powers of Congress or the legislative branch. And Section 8 specifically refers to what Congress is allowed to do. So in the Constitution, there's no explicit numbers for the clauses, but generally it's the paragraphs. So each new paragraph is a clause. So this would be clause 1, clause 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if I am citing clause 2, which states that Congress has the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. All I would need to know is that I'm citing Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2. So I go over to my footnote, and I'm just going to say U.S. Constitution. CONST is the abbreviation for Constitution. And again, we don't have to write out the full Constitution. This is supposed to be in small caps, but since it's not available on Google, I'm just going to use a regular abbreviation or regular capitalization. Then Article 1, and then the section number, 8, and then CL for clause 2, and a period. And that's the full citation of a Constitution article. As we discussed before, you can also cite amendments or the preamble. So lastly, that's kind of the conclusion of our information about walking through the citations. So if anyone has any questions, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. So I see Thomas has a question. So when using legislative material citations from the style guide, should we use the timestamp in absence of the source number? This would be for the federal congressional hearing format. Okay, let's take a look at that.
As Caroline's pulling that up, I would say no, just because they're two different things. I would source it similar to the way you source page numbers. So at the end of the citation, adding at and then whatever the timestamp is. But since the source number is sort of different from a page number, if that makes sense, I don't think you could really replace the timestamp and the page number.
Yeah, if there's no page number, then just don't worry about that portion of the citation. Sometimes with citations, like you just won't have all of the information for the footnote. And if it's not providing a page number, there's not much that you can do about that. So you can just cite it using the federal congressional hearing format and just with an absent page number, and that's totally fine. Good question. If anyone else has any questions or wants us to look at any specific footnotes, let us know. And if you don't, that's okay. Just everyone, please be sure to ask for any help throughout the next week or so while writing footnotes. Feel free to use the style guide. If you have any suggestions for improvements of the style guide or any YouTube videos that you want us to make, let us know and we can get those up. Or if you want to make any appointments with any member of the editorial board, that's fine too. So we'll stick around for a little bit if anyone has any questions. But otherwise, thank you guys for coming. We'll send out the recording later tonight, and good luck with your citations.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.